The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you for joining me today for this webinar, Data and Analytics, How They Influence Marketing. I want to check first. I want to run a quick poll. We still have a few people joining us, but I want to run a quick poll to see if you are able to hear me. Please let me know if you are hearing me speak right now. Great. I like to make sure that I am talking to you and not just talking to myself here. It looks like we have a few people who are saying no. All right, we will have to look into that here and make sure that everybody can get online with us. All right, so while we let a few others join in here, I just want to take care of a couple housekeeping items. At any point during this presentation, if you have any questions, you can go to the chat box in the GoToWebinar dashboard. I will try to address them as they come up. And if I'm not able to get to, if we get a lot of questions, I'm not able to get to everything, I will try to follow up at the end of the webinar or follow up with you personally to provide the answer that you need. So let's go ahead and get started here. This is a webinar about data and analytics, how they influence your marketing. I'm just going to advance my slide here. Here at Ingenuity, we can help your firm or association improve your visibility and reputation. We're a team of high-level consultants with extensive experience. We have sat where you are in marketing departments, and some of us have even owned our own businesses. Ingenuity provides a fully outsourced solution to firms with limited or no internal marketing resources. We can provide support at the level you need it in branding, SEO, research, and more. And I am Natalie Klein. I am a communications consultant at Ingenuity. I write content and work with our clients on their digital and SEO strategies. I really enjoy being able to come up with these strategies and then see how the efforts pay off and create results for our clients. There's nothing that gets me more excited than seeing these results. Outside of work, I enjoy trail running. I spend some time in the gym powerlifting and just generally try to enjoy any time outdoors that I can. And then every spring and summer, I can be found on the sidelines of a softball field watching my 13-year-old daughter play. So let's go ahead and dive into today's agenda and we'll start discussing our topics here. We're going to start by talking about the marketing ROI challenges that marketers face today. It's become complex. There's a lot of information available. And sometimes deciphering what information you need to be tracking can be the hardest part. And then taking that information and converting it into action that you can take to further inform your marketing. That's sometimes the biggest challenges that we hear our clients and prospects are having. We'll then talk about the key metrics that most of you need to be tracking. And then we'll discuss how you can use the immense amount of data that's available to you to inform your marketing strategies and to continue to grow your firm. As a marketer today, you really need to be a blend of artist and scientist. The job has become very analytical, but creativity is still highly essential. As a modern marketer, you're required to wear many hats. You have to be a content expert, a social media whiz, a data expert, monitor performance. You have to be able to manage budgets, sometimes pretty strict budgets, and so much more. And while marketing has become more complex, I personally think that it's a great time to be a marketer. We have never had so much information at our disposal to be wildly effective at what we do. In marketing today, it's not just about getting that traffic. You have to be focused on getting targeted traffic, relevant traffic. You need to be focused on getting people who are going to engage on your website and your social media and engage with your content and respond. It really doesn't matter how many followers you have on social media or how many people are coming to your website if they aren't engaging and becoming customers. You have to know your audience. Where do they spend their time online? How can you reach your ideal customer where they are at? How can you convert these prospects into clients? The good news is that you can answer these questions through all the technology and analytics that's available today. I know I make it sound simple, but I do understand your pains. It's really not simple, and that's why you're here today. So understanding what your analytics are saying about your marketing and then how to apply that to optimize your efforts for greater results and conversion takes a mix of analytical thinking and creative approach. As marketers, if we want to be effective, it's important that we evolve with the processes and tools that are becoming available to us today. I want to find out from you, what is your top challenge in determining your marketing ROI? And I'll give you a moment to answer this poll. Perhaps you struggle with knowing what you need to measure. Maybe you know what you're measuring, but it's analyzing the data. Or perhaps it's taking that data and applying the results to your strategy. Good. It looks like we're getting a lot of good answers. Everyone's pretty much split between most, although analyzing the data is on top. There we go. About 38% of you said that analyzing the data is the difficult or the challenge for you, and 38% said it's applying the results. So it was pretty evenly split, and some of you are challenged with knowing what to measure. And if you feel like you don't know where to get started when measuring your marketing ROI, you're definitely not alone. We hear this so often from our clients. We also hear that there's too much information. It's overwhelming. If you try to search online about what you should measure, you'll get so many options for nearly every business scenario available. But what works for one firm or what's even working for your competitor, it just might not be right for your firm. It has to be personalized, how you measure and how you apply it. And while there are some common things that most professional service firms will measure, it is going to come down to what your goals are. Another thing we hear from clients and prospects, and what a lot of you said, is that when it comes to your marketing analytics, you have an abundance of data. And you even might have a basic understanding of what the metrics mean, but you just don't know how to translate it into action to further your goals and support strategies. It's important to learn how to apply the data, because understanding what's working and what's not working in marketing and understanding your key performance indicators is an imperative part of your business growth strategy. For a few minutes here, let's talk about some of the tools available and the most important metrics and how they work together to give you a clearer picture of your marketing results. This is by no means a comprehensive list. And I'm also not saying that these are the only metrics that you're going to measure in your firm. This is simply a starting point and some of the most universal metrics that most firms will pay attention to. So first, the tools. There are so many tools available that can help you measure your marketing KPIs. These are some of the most common ones we use. Google has a host of products available that include Google Analytics and Search Console. And these are two of the key ones that we use with our clients when measuring their data. Each social network then also has its own analytics component that will provide you information on your followers and engagement. The challenge with social platforms is that each one does have its own analytics metrics, and they can differ a bit. They are getting a little more consistent, but still what you measure and report on, for instance, in LinkedIn, might be a little different than what's available from Facebook or Twitter. There are also tools available that will aggregate the analytics from across all your digital channels, including social media, into one report. There can be limitations to some of these tools, however, and they can often come at a significant price. The other thing that I have found is that looking at an auto-generated report every month just might not give you the full picture, whereas being able to dive into the analytics and put the pieces together and go from one area that maybe you don't look at it one month, but the next month you do decide to look into a little bit more on your demographics, for instance, in your social media. Being able to dive into this just helps you uncover some new insights. And with our clients, we do use a blend of the generated and custom reporting so that we can get a clearer and more individualized picture for them of how their website and social platforms and their digital strategies are all aligning and performing. In addition, if you're an Ingenuity client who has hired us for SEO, we also use a tool to measure keyword performance called Rank Tracker, and we pay for this. It measures the ranking for keywords and phrases within search engines and also helps us to advise clients on how their keywords perform that they're using in their content. And then we can make recommendations to improve them to keep them high on the rankings within Google and being in the search engines. There are a number of other tools out there that basically do the same thing that we do with Rank Tracker. You also have a CRM or a customer relationship management tool. Many of these began as just basic email marketing programs, but they're now becoming full-scale sales and marketing platforms that track email statistics. They provide lead scoring, automated nurturing sequences. You can create landing pages within them, have downloads and attractors, and you can do just so much with these. It's kind of like bundling all of your digital marketing into one package. And if you're not using a CRM or you're not taking advantage of what yours has to offer, this really should be a priority for you in 2020. In the end, it really just comes down to selecting the tools that will measure the metrics most important to your firm and your goals. So these are just a few examples of things that you can use to measure your marketing results. And when you have the analytics and the performance data, that's a great first step. But if all you have is a report with no clear idea of what it means for your campaigns and your marketing strategy, then you're not going to be able to apply the information to improve your efforts. Like I mentioned, we do a combination of auto-generated and custom reporting, and our clients receive a report similar to what's shown above or shown here in this on the screen, with all the relevant data that they need to know about, for in this case, it's their website. But they also receive a supplementary document providing insights and recommendations. We know that they're busy. They can't be experts in every area, and neither can you. But that's why firms like ours are hired, is to help with those insights. So it's important that you know that there's more to your marketing analytics than just numbers, charts, and pretty reports. So now we're going to take some time to dive into some of the most important metrics and how they work together to give you a clearer picture of your marketing results. Again, this is not a comprehensive list. This is just a baseline of what is important to take note of. Let's start with Google Analytics and specifically with bounce rate. It's one of the most buzzed phrases in website analytics, to the point that decisions sometimes get made almost exclusively over this metric. But it is far from giving you the full picture on how your website and individual pages are performing. And your bounce rate is generally, it's the percentage of the visitors who are coming to your website and they aren't viewing any more content. They're not going on and clicking that call to action on the page or clicking somewhere else on your menu. They are leaving right off that page. They're bouncing right off your website. And that's not a good thing. You want people to be staying. Here you are seeing site-wide metrics. If you were looking at this area for your website and you saw an 80% bounce rate, that could be cause for alarm. In this instance, having a 64% bounce rate isn't bad. Once it starts to go above 70%, we begin some investigation, especially if it's showing a trend of rising over multiple reporting periods. But even though a 64% bounce rate isn't a reason for alarm, it hardly tells me the whole story. So it's important to take a look at the individual pages within the behavior section of the Google Analytics menu. When I start looking at individual pages within the website, I can see that I have a fairly high bounce rate on this page that's circled. So just because my website as a whole has an acceptable bounce rate doesn't mean I do nothing. This page doesn't have a good bounce rate and it needs to be reviewed for optimization. But bounce rate's not the only metric you need to be concerned with when trying to determine what pages are performing and which ones aren't. You cannot look at bounce rate in a vacuum. Whenever you're looking at bounce rate metrics on a page, you also need to look at it alongside entrances. And then you also have to take your exit rate and overall page views into account as well. Let's define what these are, and then we'll look at an example to show how these interact. So your page views, this is the total number of people who are viewing a page. This can include first-time visitors, anybody coming back. It's people who have viewed other pages on your website and navigated to this page that it's reporting on. It's basically all the visitors to that page. Your exit rate is how many people left your website on that page. This is different than bounce rate though, because your bounce rate is only the people who came onto that page and left, whereas your exit rate also includes people who have viewed other pages and came to this page and left. And then your entrances tell you how many people enter your site on a page. So that's why entrances are critical to bounce rate, because if people enter on a page and they bounce right off, they're important metrics to keep together, and I'll explain more in just a moment. So exit rate, just to reiterate the difference here a little bit between exit rate and bounce rate. Exit rate is the percentage of visits that were last in that session of that user. So a bounce rate is always going to be an exit, but exits are not always bounces, because remember, those exits sometimes come from other pages, and a bounce rate is where they only view that page in their session. So that's an important distinction to have as you look at these rates. So now we're going to look at how this applies. In this example, this page has a relatively high bounce rate, however, the exit rate is low. Overall, the page views are 139, as you can see on this table, with 26 of those page views coming from the audience entering on this page. So 20 of those 26 who entered here, approximately 19.5 left, so they bounced right off the page, but 6.5 did not. Also, of those 139 page views, 113, which is what I get from subtracting the entrances to the page from the overall page views. So 113 came from another page on the website. Furthermore, of those 113, only 41% exited the website from this page. So nearly 60% of them continued on to view more information within the website. So in spite of a higher bounce rate than I prefer, my audience is fairly engaged with this page because there's a low exit rate. The bounce rate could be higher for a number of reasons, and this is where today's marketers become detectives to uncover what the data is telling them. Perhaps there was a social post that linked to this page that brought less engaged traffic to the page. And if that was the case, you would go to the social platforms where the post was shared to review the engagement on that post. Or it's possible the link was in an email that went out to a specific prospect list. Whatever the reason, always investigate what the possibilities are for a certain metric to be what it is in order to determine what, if any, action needs to take place to optimize that page to drive the higher engagement. Sometimes, as in this case, the best course of action can be no action. There may not be a reason to make changes when overall your page is working well. And generally what I'll tell you too is that if I find that there is a very high exit rate, I will frequently defer straight to the call to action. It's usually a good indication that you have a weak call to action that needs to be updated and strengthened, and usually we find that that will remedy that exit rate fairly quickly. When it comes to social media analytics, there are a few key things you need to look at as well. Your impressions will tell you how often your post is being seen on a social media platform. The clicks will tell you, if you have a URL included, it'll give you the number of times that it's been clicked within your posts. Likes, comments, and shares. This tells you how many people are engaging with your content. The more likes and comments and shares you get, the more you can reach new prospects, because if someone likes your post or comments or shares on it, it puts it out to their audience. So that's how you expand your reach, and that's why engagement is so critical. Your click-through rate This is the percent of the impressions who click your link. And then you have your engagement rate. So this includes click-through rate can be a little, and engagement rate can get a little mixed up. Sometimes they're very similar. But engagement rate includes not only the click-through rate or the clicks on your URL, but it also includes the engagement in the form of likes, comments, and shares. Within your CRM or your email analytics, you want to be tracking your open rate, which tells you the number of email recipients who are seeing your email. This can be either through the preview pane of their email platform or active viewing when they click into the email. Your click-through rate is important as well, because if you have any URLs that are driving people back to your website, you want to know that they are clicking them. And there are many of the CRMs, if you have multiple URLs, they will also track those individually, so you can see how many people are clicking on your homepage versus how many people are clicking on the blog or other URLs that are contained therein. You really want to pay attention to your bounce rate and opt-out rate. The bounce rate tells you how many emails are not able to be delivered for numerous different reasons, including incorrect email addresses, the individual moved to a new company and it's no longer deliverable. And your opt-out rate, these are the people who are deciding they don't want to receive your emails. And this is especially important if you're emailing random contacts and they're reporting you, because they will be reporting you as spam, and you don't want that. And if either your bounce rate or your opt-out rate get too high, you can end up getting banned from sending emails until you remedy that situation, which means cleaning up your list and making sure that you're getting all those bounces and opt-outs off of there. You can also track, sometimes our clients will ask us a lot, how do I compare to others in my industry when it comes to my emails? Am I getting the same amount of opens and clicks as others in my industry? And you can find that out. Some CRMs have this feature built in, but you can also research it in other places. One site that we use is this link on the screen for Campaign Monitor. So you can go on there and check out your industry and see where you average based on what others are reporting that they are getting. Now that we've covered some of the key metrics you need to be paying attention to, let's discuss how these tie together and help you create and adjust your marketing strategy. So marketing ROI is generally just the practice of attributing profit and revenue growth to impact your marketing initiatives. And you can even be looking at this from, your marketing ROI can also be negative. Perhaps you don't have a profit and you don't have growth. That can also impact your marketing initiatives and how you proceed. So it's important to know whether or not you're having success at it, or maybe something's not working and needs to be revised. You have to set your strategy. You have to set your goal and make sure it's measurable. Knowing your goal helps you determine how you will measure your success. If it's a brand or service awareness, you could measure the number of URL clicks to a page on your website about a service or niche. If your goal is lead generation, your metric may be the number of leads you receive from an online form. Your audience, you have to know who they are. You have to be intimately aware of who they are, what they do, where they spend their time online. What is their behavior when they interact with your content on your website, on social channels, or in emails? Where are you finding you're more effective with your audience? And you can sometimes even determine how much your audience overlaps just by knowing them and knowing who's on your email list, who is following you on social media, who's responding to your content on social media. Knowing your audience, it helps you to create content geared towards them. And I will show you how you can review who your audience is in just a few moments. Your brand is how and why your customers choose you over your competitors. You can think of it as your company's personality. So it's something that's worth defining very clearly. What do you stand for? And are the actions of your employees aligned with this? What are your strongest character traits? And how does that translate into your presence, from the images you use on your website to the language you use in your emails? If you're not sure, you can start by asking yourself these questions. What problems do you solve? What are your distinctive benefits? And what's your brand promise? We will dive deeper into applying analytics into your strategy in a moment, but the general idea is to use the information within your website analytics and social media platforms to identify the demographics of your audience. How old are they? What industries are they in, and what titles do they have? And where does your audience reside? And then you have to determine how you're going to measure results. Once you've set your efforts in motion, you need to have, actually before you even set these efforts into motion, you need to have these analytics tools in place so that you can begin to track how your audience is behaving, how they are interacting with your content, because how they're doing that determines how you then optimize and move forward with your content. In addition, you need to look at your timing. How often do you need to measure results? At the beginning of a campaign, we will analyze the data more frequently to get the initial impact. This allows us to make adjustments early on to optimize so that we can potentially realize some ROI a little bit sooner. As a campaign becomes established, the frequency in which the data is analyzed may get spread out. And then we determine whether or not it needs to be quarterly or monthly, or if there's more of a planned timeline. Maybe you're on a 3-week cycle for a sales cycle or a hiring cycle. So it's important to know what timeline that you are dealing with to determine how often you need to measure your results. Excuse me. For our clients, when we're doing SEO analysis and recommendations, we often analyze on a quarterly basis because SEO and content marketing, it really is more of a long game. For paid search, we will analyze the data much more frequently on a monthly basis with mid-month checks, because ad campaigns, these require the ability to adjust quickly with changes. If we aren't closely monitoring and tracking ad campaigns, it could be costly for our clients. So this just requires we're more on top of that. So you have to look at, for timing, you have to look at what the impact is if you aren't tracking. What would happen if, for instance, you have an ad that is declined and you're not getting traffic to your website, but you're reporting every 3 months, but this happens 15 days into your reporting period. You then have a majority of your reporting period, your ad wouldn't even be effective. So that's why it's important to look at that. Another example, if you're working with your HR department and you're trying to measure your marketing for recruitment efforts, you would look at the average time it takes to fill specific positions to determine how often you need to measure your results and look at what's happening. So just understand that even though I use the term sales cycle, the concept applies to any sort of cycle your firm deals with. So just determine the starting and ending points of this cycle and then put in your timeline, your measurement timeline in there. You have to then determine how you're going to collect the data. I mentioned a number of possible tools at the beginning of this webinar. Again, those are just a few examples. It's far from the full picture of what is available. So, just go out there. You can often do some trials on different things for a month, a week, 2 months, whatever you need to do before you purchase. You can be limited on the trials, however, where you might not be able to print or export a report, but you can at least set it up and see what you're going to get. You really need to be good at all of this today, or you need to have a team in place to fill the gaps when it comes to the skills. It's costly to hire for every skill needed in marketing. So we are seeing a rise in outsourced marketing. Marketers are hiring consultants like Ingenuity to fill these positions rather than hiring an employee, simply because it keeps the continuity going. You don't have a loss of service. You are able to get a high level of expertise without having to hire for it. And then you have to determine your approach. What is the easiest or the best way for you to calculate the return the investment for your firm? Calculating ROI on your marketing activities is part numbers, but it often can even come down to subjective factors. Perhaps the numbers alone don't justify the efforts, but there are other areas where you have seen an improvement. Awareness about your services and niches with current clients, while this is difficult to measure in a numerical way, can be just as valuable as a new client, which can be measured by the value of the service engagement. So sometimes your measurements are subjective. They're more of a perception thing by you as the marketer, and that's where you get creative in explaining and justifying, continuing with your efforts. All right, so now we are going to look at how you can take some of the information about your demographics and tie it all into your strategy. So this is a chart of Facebook follower demographics. And let's say that your demographics on Facebook show that your audience is primarily comprised of women between the ages of 35 to 64. Then you head over to LinkedIn, and you can see other demographics about your followers, such as their job function, which is shown here, industry, location, and more. You just change up at the top of the screen. You just use that drop down and you can change the information that you're seeing. You can compile the information from the demographics in Facebook and the demographics in LinkedIn to get a good snapshot of what your audience looks like. Then you can head into Google Analytics and you can see where users of your website are located and how engaged they are. This can help drive a number of your strategies, including content, social, and paid search. If you see that users in California are engaged with your website, you may want to look at adding a Google Ads or LinkedIn ad strategy to get leads in that market. Likewise, if you find a market you want to be in just isn't engaging with your website and content the way you would like for business development, it can be a starting point to dig in and find out why. Google Analytics can also tell you how much of your traffic is coming from desktop or mobile devices and how engaged each one is. This is an important piece of the puzzle for your content strategy. The length of your content and the type of content, it can be driven by what your audience is using to view your website. Mobile users are generally looking for shorter, a little bit easier to digest content. Bulleted lists, shorter sentences, and more simplistic vocabulary is better for mobile users. But if you know that your users are falling into a younger demographic, you need to look at how you're putting your content out as well. You have an even greater reason to create shorter content because that demographic is packing it all in. They're busy. And generally speaking, they have a shorter attention span. But don't think I'm saying that if all of these metrics align, that your content, that you're only creating shorter and concise content. On the contrary, you need longer form content because that's good for SEO. But your strategy needs to take your core audience into account as well. It's important to note too that different platforms have different information on your followers. And you might have different followers on Facebook versus LinkedIn, but you might also have a great overlap. So you can't fully assume that you have the same age, gender ratio, and other demographic info within your followers on all the platforms. So you might have to look at changing up a little bit of your strategy and your approach on LinkedIn versus how you're doing it on Facebook or Twitter. But it's generally you can get a fairly good idea of what your demographic is. You can use the information across the platforms to get a baseline to focus your content strategy, but it's kind of like looking at a bunch of puzzle pieces to see how they fit. If you can find a correlation between these social platforms, it can either support similar content or completely different strategies for each. But you really just have to dive in and get very familiar with your demographics and how they are from platform to platform. And then email. We're going to talk a little bit about how to approach your email and how this works. So the goal of each email is to do a job. Perhaps it's pushing out a blog post on your website. It's getting webinar signups. It could even just be brand awareness around your services. In this example, our client is sending out a blog update to their contacts. The goal is to drive their audience to the firm's website. And the call to action at the bottom links to the blog post on the website. Then we can head over to Google Analytics to find out if the audience is engaged in the page or if we need to look at making some adjustments to optimize the post. In this case, the page has a high bounce rate and a high exit rate, which we discussed what those mean earlier on. The time on page, though, is high at over 6 minutes. So this tells me that the audience is engaged. They're reading the content, but they aren't going on to view additional pages within the website. This could be simply that the audience is already very familiar with the firm, but it could be that there's other issues as well. So what I would do in this situation, my recommendation would be to review the call to action at the bottom of the blog post and make it a little stronger. Make it something more actionable, perhaps, or look at another piece of relevant content that builds on what was just spoken about or just written about or related to it. So it's just kind of being a little bit of a detective, looking into the why, looking into the how, and seeing what pieces you can put together. It's important that you're creating the journey as the marketer that you want your audience to take. As you know, marketing is essentially a bunch of building blocks that all build toward your goals. You really can't operate any strategy or campaign within a vacuum. So it's important to know how your various campaigns and strategies complement and aid each other to accomplish your goals. And this is why you have to understand the purpose of your metrics by identifying your leading and lagging indicators. So a leading indicator tells you how you're progressing towards your goal, whereas a lagging indicator helps you understand if you've met your goal or not. In the case of a paid search campaign on LinkedIn, a leading indicator could be the number of monthly form submissions you receive towards your overall goal for leads by the end of the campaign, because in that instance, your lagging indicator would be the number of leads you get at the end. So having that metric in between the start of your campaign to the end of it that you can measure helps you know how close you're going to be to your goal at the end. Examples of a lagging indicator could also include things like revenue, client retention at the end of the year, the number of new clients you receive in any given year, or the number of newsletter signups if your entire goal is simply to get newsletter signups. But really what a lagging or leading indicator is, it depends on your goals. It's possible that in a campaign, excuse me, what is a lagging indicator could be a leading indicator for a broader marketing strategy, as I explained above in the example with a paid search campaign. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I just lost my place a moment. For example, you may have a campaign to get more newsletter signups. For the campaign, this would be a lagging indicator because the number of signups is what tells you if you met your goal or not. In conjunction with this campaign, you may have a larger strategy geared around lead generation. Getting newsletter signups can be a part of the lead generation strategy by bringing more prospects to your firm. Within this strategy, newsletter signups would be a leading indicator to tell you how you're progressing towards your goal. You need to have prospects to include in your email nurturing sequences that are intended to convert leads. So it's important to just identify how you're going to measure your progress towards your goal and then how you measure what the metrics are that determine whether or not you met your goal. All right, so just to wrap up a little bit here, set your goals. Make sure they are measurable and attainable. Make sure they're realistic. You're not going to have success if you have a high pie in the sky goal that you really can't meet if you don't have the resources, the staff, the skill, whatever it might be. Make sure it is measurable. Be intimately familiar with your audience. Make sure that you know who they are, where they're spending their time online. How do you reach them? What are the most effective ways to get in front of your audience? And then make sure you're maintaining consistency with your brand messaging. Make sure that how you're presenting yourself through images, through your emails, through your social media, it's all consistent with how you want your brand to be seen. Then determine how you can use your analytics and demographics to inform your strategy. What are the most important metrics that you need to be tracking? What is going to tell you whether or not you are achieving your goals or you're on track to achieve them? What's your leading and lagging indicators to tell you how far along you are within your strategy? Make sure you're measuring your results. Put in place these analytics tools. Take some time, learn to understand them, because that's what's going to give you the confidence to let your firm leaders know that you're on track, that you're there. It's not a guessing game. And then you take your analytics to further optimize your marketing efforts. Put those puzzle pieces together, because what you see happening on your website and then what's happening within your social media, these do connect. And so it's important to just know how they're connecting, or if there is a disconnect, where is that disconnect? So it's being a detective. It's really getting in and digging in creatively. I talked about needing to be creative. That's not just in knowing your design or knowing how to write content. It's also being creative in how you're reviewing your analytics. It goes beyond just seeing the numbers. It's also diving into what those numbers actually mean and how they correlate with each other. Excuse me. And finally, be fluid and ready to adjust your strategy, because marketing is not something that you can just put in place and expect it to drive forward. You have to consistently be nimble and moving and adjusting. You have to make sure that you can see what's happening through your analytics and respond accordingly. If something's not working, make the decision to either stop that effort or optimize it. What can be done to make it effective? And if you can't do anything to make it more effective, then if it's not doing anything for your firm, then you cut it out. So just know how you can adjust and look at those analytics. And I'm going to leave you with this. Marketing's job is never done. It's about perpetual motion. We must continue to innovate every day. And I firmly believe that we really are in such a great time for marketing right now. We have so much available to us that can help us be effective and do our jobs and create results that contribute to growth. So it's time for us to just employ these things and really learn what it means for us and how to let these analytics inform our marketing efforts. So your next steps, dig into your analytics with the sole purpose of understanding what is important for your firm in specific, not what's important for your competitor or another company down the street that your friend works at. And know what is important for your firm. Know what your analytics mean for your firm. This is key. There's so many metrics and they aren't all important for each firm or brand. Also keep in mind that what's important for you today can change over time. And it also might be different for various marketing strategies and campaigns. I am constantly looking at analytics differently for each client we work with at Ingenuity, and will even have my own aha moments of how a specific metric applies to their content, social, or other strategies. So remain open-minded about the analytics and KPIs you measure. As you look at your analytics, ask yourself, how do they support your current marketing efforts? And how can your analytics create a new direction for your marketing or individual campaigns? And then identify how your various strategies tie together so that you can more effectively measure the results and impact. Marketing, your campaigns, your strategies, they don't operate in a vacuum. So make sure that you are understanding how they correlate. Take stock of how your various strategies and campaigns tie together. When you can allow your efforts to build off of each other, you will have a greater impact. All right, I don't see any questions. Does anybody have any questions before we sign off here? No? All right, well, if you come up with any questions at all, you can feel free to contact me. My information is on the screen. You can email me at natalie@ingenuitymarketing.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Natalie Klein, and the address for my LinkedIn account is right there. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. I hope you learned something about how you can use your data and analytics to influence your marketing. And if you have questions as you start to apply some of this, please reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. Thank you. Bye.